This is William K. Murtaugh, Merc Witness 1. And tonight I'm going to take a different take on a situation that I had discussed before. And that is how to deal with an adverse situation. Now, I have called Field McConnell a coward. And I still call Field McConnell a coward. Because he is a big crybaby behind bars, whining that people are trying to kill him when they're not. Instead of going to Florida, he fights extradition, and in the end it's going to bite him in the ass. But I'll discuss that particular subject on another day. But what I'm going to do now is discuss this dealing with adversity. For this is something that Field McConnell surprisingly excels at, and the other coward, Timithoy Charles Holmseth, does not. Now, Field McConnell has been in jail almost a month. December 2nd will be exactly 1 month that he has been in prison. He's going to court to determine whether or not he's going to get out of jail, or if the state of Wisconsin is going to grant another 30 to 60 days for the extradition fight where McConnell would stay in jail before he's extradited to Florida. Tim Holmseth, on the other hand, is living high on the hog, sitting in front of a TV set, probably had a really nice Thanksgiving dinner. As of late, at least over the last couple of days, I haven't heard too much from Timithoy Holmseth. He hasn't been talking about Field McConnell, and he certainly has not been talking about himself. There has been no talk of those Navy SEALs and Marines protecting him. There's been no talk of the pedophile task force to any great degree. Timithoy Holmseth for the last 2 days has remained quiet. And when he does speak, it's not very often that he speaks of one Field McConnell. He seems to be embarrassingly quiet when it comes to discussing Mr. McConnell. You know, I'm kind of curious as to why that is, because he's the reason Field McConnell is in prison. Maybe that's something that Field McConnell and Field McConnell's followers might want to take into consideration, because it's those people that Timithoy Holmseth does not talk about that helped him in the past that they should be concerned about. There was the man, for instance, that was responsible for hiring the lawyer that sued me and Kim. We don't hear about him. Not at all. As a matter of fact, we hear a lot about the person that helps this man talk on the air. And I'm speaking of Mr. Steele. He has not talked about Mr. Steele too much lately. Mr. Steele had an organization quite similar to the Children's Crusade. It was some kind of an international tribunal. It had the same goal in mind. But we hear absolutely positively nothing about that organization from Holmseth. He was supposed to go to England and give testimony in some kind of judicial hearing on the cases that he claims to have solved. The John Benet Ramsey case, the Haley Cummings case, I think the Kettering case, or whatever the name is. But we don't hear about this anymore. All we hear about is this Pentagon pedophile task force and Tim being third in line behind the President of the United States. We don't see Tim Holmseth sitting in a parking lot, piggybacking off of Wi-Fi, talking about how he's going to tour the country, interviewing people that have been abused by the court system and those that have had dealings with pedophiles, and then turn all these interviews over to the President of the United States. You haven't heard a word about that. We've heard absolutely nothing. And one thing we haven't heard much about from Tim Holmseth is his reaction to Preacher Dan. The woman that Preacher Dan claimed married him walked out after 4 days because the abuse was so bad. They weren't legally married, of course. It was a fake ceremony. There was no marriage license as required in the state of Alaska, so on and so forth. And now the woman is in hiding in an apartment, not sure what's going to happen to her. But, this is just typical of these people that Tim hangs around with. They have an absolute hate of women. They treat women as property. Women have to be subservient, so on and so forth. But through all of this, at least Field McConnell, to some extent, has remained loyal to his wife and does not talk about women being property, at least not that I'm aware of. So the difference between Field McConnell and Timithoy Holmseth is how you deal with an adverse situation. Field McConnell is at least dealing with his incarceration in prison. He may not be handling it in a way I agree, but at least he's handling it to some extent and coping with the situation, while Timothy Charles Holmseth remains in a recreation room in somebody's basement, eating a lot of food for free, having somebody wash his clothes. Maybe he even takes an occasional bath. That would be something. All for nothing. No charges, no nothing. If Timithoy Holmseth is arrested, he will then have to deal with an adverse situation. It will be interesting to see how Timothy Charles Holmseth handles an adverse situation. But we wait and we see. We have 2 days, maybe 3, to find out what's going to happen to Mr. McConnell. Whatever happens to Mr. McConnell, Timothy Charles Holmseth is going to be free to sit on the sofa, watch his TV, and piggyback off of somebody's internet. This is William K. Murtaugh, Witness 1. Have a good one.